Welcome to Sovereign Souls, a special podcast sponsored by the Spirit Release Academy with your hosts, Jonno and Andy Porter.
In this episode, we talk about myths, fears, and common misconceptions.
Yeah, I think it's good for us to kind of cover these things as well. Really, there's lots of conversations about what spirit release therapy is and what spirit release therapy is not, I guess, as well. So spirit release therapy used to be, well, the conversation I remember going back probably 15 years when I first met Terry, really, was SRT, was just a form of exorcism. So it's basically seen to be a gentle, sort of non-invasive, I guess, non-religious healing technique, sort of focused on the compassion and communication, but without the dramatic confrontation. So when we talk about exorcism, we think about Hollywood generally. We think about Hollywood films and the fact that we've got religious people, priests in a room with a cross, holy water, throwing the holy water around the room, getting everything wet. We've got the person that's being exorcised that has some sort of demonic attachment or entity possessing them. And then, of course, you've got all of the theatrics that tend to go on around that conversation, that narrative. Whereas obviously our version of SRT is none of those things happen. So it's non-confrontational. We don't actually connect with the person that we're working with. And everything is being done through the intervention of our spiritual team, which I think is the big step change, really. So for me, that's one of the kind of big myths around SRT. It's not just exorcism. We cover a whole raft of different negative, intrusive energies and vibrations that cause problems for people.
And as you're saying, Andy, it's not just about the exorcism. This works on so many different levels. And I think one of the things for me that is a misconception is that, I mean, what we have is a very specific spirit-guided remote spirit release protocol that we work. It's specialist. It's unique to the academy. But if you say to somebody that you work in SRT, spirit release therapy, it's very common for someone to turn around and say, I do that. And instantly I think, no, you don't. And it might be, of course, that they do. But what they consider, or what the majority of people consider to be spirit release therapy, is when you're releasing a discarnate soul from a person back into the light. And of course, that is spirit release. It is helping spirits that are needy and they require help to go back into the light. And that's exactly what it is. But what we define as our work through the SGRSR, Spirit Guided Remote Spirit Release, is that we work on over 20 levels to clear someone. One of those levels is the actual release of discarnate spirits. So, yes, we do that, but we do so much more. And this is where the misconception comes in. And it's only really when someone comes through the actual training and they realize the depth of the work that we do, plus the many different modules that we go into. And this is why we require a manager. This is why we require a facilitator to go in and work with a medium. Not only is it safer, it's much safer to do that, but it's more professional. You get it done properly. Somebody is there managing the session, meaning that the medium only has to concentrate on the connection to the guide, whether that be through mental mediumship, whether that be through trance. It just releases the medium to be able to speak solely to the guide. So there's little interference and there's little self-thought going into it from the medium as well. So one of the misconceptions there is that this is not just about releasing discarnate spirits into the light. It is much more than that.
Yeah, I think you've covered it well, Jonno. Again, when we talk about this with mediums, when mediums start the training with us, they say, oh, as you said, I do this. And we always look and smile and think, well, no, you don't do what we're about to teach you. You help earthbound spirits move on. You don't look at closing portals. You're not looking at cords and connections into someone's etheric field. You're not looking at interdimensional parasites that may be piggybacking on people. You're not talking to and clearing negative entities or demonic entities from someone. There's a whole raft. You're not looking for AI implants in someone's etheric field. You're not looking at grounding or chakras that have been tampered with or some sort of intrusion. So as you say, Jonno, there's a good at least 20 to 30 different frequencies, because each one of these things, from our perspective, is a frequency of vibration. So when our spirit guides go in and perform an intervention on behalf of a recipient or client, they're looking at a frequency and they're clearing that frequency. And there are lots of frequencies, as you can imagine, to clear. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions about spirit release therapy, is we read it as the word says, spirit release therapy. So we're thinking we're releasing spirits. And I think that, I guess, is a misconception from our perspective in terms of the Spirit Release Academy, because we do release spirits, as you said, but we do a whole host of other things too. And I guess the name doesn't really capture that particularly well.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify it in a way that everybody understands immediately. But as soon as someone does start coming in and interacting with us, I then begin to realise that really what we're doing is completely unique to the Academy. The protocol that we have is completely unique to what we do. And that is one of the reasons why we have such a great success rate. But going back to the sort of misconceptions, I mean, one of the things that we hear a lot is that any entity that attaches is either evil or demonic. And personally, I wouldn't say that is the case. And yes, there is demonic energy out there. That's been scripted for thousands and thousands of years, all across the world. Different religions, different beliefs, all talk about some form of demonic entity. And that is something that we clear today. We do work against that energy on pretty much on a daily basis. So yeah, there are intelligent energies out there that perhaps we would consider to have an evil intent. But also there's attachments that are not evil. And in fact, some of them are very lovely. If you're looking to release discarnate spirits or whatever, an earthbound spirit, it could be an ancestor, it could be a relation, it could be a grandmother. And that grandmother could be connecting to you because they're trying to help you, they're trying to guide you through different things. It's just that any interference into your own energy will cause a negative vibration because that vibration is not solely yours. And it doesn't mean to say that connection to the grandmother will then cease. It will just transmute, and the communication will be on a different level and the guidance will be on a different level. But what it is important is that people are not carrying an energy that is not theirs, because that will cause a disruptive influence over their life's path. And that's whether it's a positive connection and attachment or whether we go to the other extreme, which is the evil or the demonic.
Yeah, I think that captures it well. Another one of the misconceptions we hear quite often in the Academy really is that SRT is dangerous because it invites more spirits. And of course this is true to a certain degree, is that we are connecting with spirits. We're a spirit-based academy. That's what we do. We actually provide intervention from a spiritual perspective. But with the proper levels of protection, grounding, and all of our trained practitioners know how to deal with spirits. And I think you said before, mate, on previous episodes, one of the key things about the training is we want the practitioners to have problems. We want them to have problems when we're watching. We want them to have problems whilst they're working in groups and teams, because we can teach them what to do when they have a problem. And I think, like all things, you only learn about a job when you get it wrong, generally. And the last thing we want is to train people in a surface level of SRT and not equip them really with the skills they're going to need and the confidence they're going to need when things go wrong. And that is one of the key things. So I think when people say SRT is dangerous, yes, it is dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing and you're not working with people that are professional and trained in the right way, then of course it is dangerous. But like everything, it's like a knife, isn't it? If you give someone a knife, it's sharp, they can cut themselves. If you teach them that the knife is sharp and not to use it in certain ways, they don't cut themselves. And this is the key from our perspective, that both you and I, mate, have been doing this for 20-odd years.
Yeah.
And we've both been through ups and downs. We both had psychic and spiritual attacks as part of the journey. But that experience is what we use to teach our practitioners to ensure that they are safe and the work that they do is safe and they have the right confidence and skill set to deal with the problems from a spiritual perspective that they will encounter.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think, the misconception that doing this work opens up a portal or opens up connection to other spirits. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does do that. That's not a misconception. That's true. unless, as Andy says, unless you know what you're doing, unless you're professional, unless you fully understand the way of working this in a very, very safe environment. And then it doesn't do any of that. It doesn't do any of that at all. It's a very, very safe way of working. And this is why we take so much importance in that psychic protection and teaching the practitioner professionally, which is why it takes so long for us to do our training compared to other people that might do it just for a couple of hours over a weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Again, it's like all things, isn't it? There are people that do things as a hobby, and the people that do things as a hobby don't need to understand it to the same depth or level. But if you do this as a profession, if you become a professional in the work that you do, it's something you do every day, as we both do. This is our full-time role. We do it as professional people, and we run a professional academy teaching the best methods that we've found with our 40 years of collective experience. And I think that's the key thing, really. And obviously, we're talking about people, again, misconceptions. You need to be possessed by a spirit to need SRT. And that isn't really the case. Most people probably have some sort of in negative intrusion in their etheric field, things they've carried around for years. Most people that get older have been through traumas, have got levels of PTSD, have got problems with family, friends, relatives. Everyone's been through some sort of emotional disturbance and negativity in their life. And generally, the older you get, the more things that you can kind of add to the list of experiences that you've been through. And it's kind of what we're here to do. We're here to kind of wade through our life, really, as a challenge and accepting the tests that come to us from the people in our lives and the things that happen to us and are done to us, but to work them out and work through them from a spiritual perspective. So all of those things are kind of baked into our pie, really. And as a SRT practitioner, again, when we look at someone's etheric field, when we go into their energy, we can see there are things in there that need to be cleared, removed, released. And I think the key with this work, from my perspective, is it's not me and it's not you that are doing this. We're not deciding what's in your field that needs clearing, but our spiritual team can see your field. They can see the vibrations, they can see the disturbance, the negativity, the traumas that you've been through in your life, and they can remove a lot of that negative energy. And that, of course, has a very subsequent change in your emotional state, how you feel and how you think. And that, I think, is one of the best things about this work, is that it's not reliant upon the skill set of the practitioner. It's reliant upon the skill set of the spirit guide that's actually doing the work. And that, I think, is the step change in the way that we work together.
I think that makes a massive difference. And certainly the step change moving forward, as we've said before, is the fact that we now have the spirit-guided remote spirit release. It is a remote way of working. To give you an example, I'm based in the UK. I can work as a medium in the UK. My facilitator can be in Canada, and the recipient of the work can be in New Zealand. And the timing of the work is instant. The timing of the work is immediate. So as soon as myself and the facilitator match up together and start the process of the clearing, the person in New Zealand could wake up as a very different person indeed, and having a very different life experience, that they don't no longer carry the baggage and weight and the interference that they had before. So the misconception that SRT needs to be done in person is not something I agree with at all. And the sole reason why I don't agree with it is because I've seen the evidence that goes against that theory. I do know practitioners and people that work in hypnosis that only say you can do this face-to-face. Well, for a start, I would never want to do this face-to-face, because I don't want somebody on my treatment couch bringing through a demonic entity in a space that's mine with me as the sole, if you like, light warrior trying to dispel that entity. I mean, yeah, put a TV camera in there and send it to Hollywood, and I get it. I fully understand. But when you're doing this daily, when you're doing this 6 days a week, you can't have that connection. You can't have that fear and the reality of being connected to, because if I'm connecting to that demonic entity, if I don't clear that, I'm taking it home. And that's not a position that I want to put myself in. It's not a position I want to put my family in, my wife, my children, my home. It's just not on. So the big thing for me is always feedback from the recipient. If the recipient changes for the positive, if the feedback coming in from them and from their family is positive, the evidence is there. Whether we acknowledge it or not, you can't fight feedback. If the feedback coming in is that instantly the voice they were hearing, the clearing of the negative energy, they feel a different person, they're free from any vibrational interference that doesn't serve them to their highest good. Remote spirit release works, and certainly the spirit-guided remote spirit release keeps us as practitioners at a very, very safe distance, one in which we can go into this work without the fear of negative intrusion ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's covered it really well, Jonno, actually. And I agree that, again, the old version of SRT was effectively in a room, hands-on, spirit release therapy. But the new modern version, and this is the one that we've developed or co-developed with Dr. Palmer, is this concept of it being remote for a reason. And when we do remote sessions, we do them as practice sessions online with people from all over the world, all our practitioners that Natasha and Tara co-host and run. And we make sure that the client is never involved in those sessions. We don't want the energy of what the clients have in the session. And we make it very clear that we're working with energy, we're very protective of our people and our practitioners, and making sure there's a big distinction between what's happening from a kind of in-person perspective to the remote perspective is the step change. And I think that's where SRA, Spirit Release Academy, we are treading this new path. We've come up with new techniques that work, that are remote, that can be done across the world, and they're done in a very, very safe way, and that works for all of the practitioners. And of course, it works quite well for the clients too, because again, clients don't need to hook up at a certain point in time. They don't need to give an hour of their time to speak to a practitioner over Zoom. They literally book a session, the practitioner books them in, they get a report back to say the work's been done, these are the findings. But the most important thing is, how do you feel? If you feel better, voices have gone, negative intrusions gone, negative feelings have gone, anger, rage, all of the issues that you had have dissipated and left, then effectively that's the only conversation. It doesn't really matter what we did or what we didn't do. If you feel better, that is the kind of yardstick that we're working with, really.
Yeah, and that goes into whether people call it, it's just imagination, it's not real, it's a placebo effect. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If somebody's not feeling right, if somebody is in danger or endangering others, and this course of action takes that negativity away and they feel better, that is the only thing that matters. So the way that we work, spirit-guided remote spirit release, we believe that this is the forefront of any particularly spiritual therapy. You can't go on and heal the wounded soul if the soul is still wounded. So we do go, this is what we would say is the paramedics, something that Dr. Palmer certainly used the phrase that this was the spiritual paramedics going in firsthand. It's us that go in and kind of save the soul, and then for other people to go in with the aftercare and take it forward. So, we believe that spirit-guided remote spirit release can go anywhere, and it is the first port of call before anybody goes into hypnosis, before anybody goes into psychotherapy, before anybody goes into anything where perhaps they're looking to better themselves and get them back onto their path.
Yeah, I think that covers it really well, Jonno. It's a good point that, again, that was Terry's wish, really. Terry's wish was that at some point SRT or our version remote spirit release, or spirit guided now remote spirit release, is the prerequisite to everything else. So if you look at hypnosis, you can't really hypnotize a client and work through their traumas and problems if you can't connect to the higher self. And if they have attachments, negative entities and things that are giving them intrusive thoughts and voices, you're working against that continually. And of course, throughout the sessions that you work, you're not ever clearing that level of intrusive and that level of control. But if they were to have an SRT session first, so they're clear, at least then you're dealing with a sovereign soul, sovereign person that actually has no attachments, no level of negativity. And then the intervention that you're performing from a hypnosis perspective has a huge different positive outcome, because, of course, you're just dealing with the person. You're not working against these levels of negative, obstructive control, really.
And I think that makes a massive difference, and sort of coming up to probably one of the most important ones that I try and dispel is the fact that our work is based on fear. And this is a conversation that I actually welcome, because I enjoy the fact that someone says that and they have the opportunity to challenge it. This for me is the complete opposite to work that is based on fear. What we try and do is not only do we try and clear an energy, clear someone's soul or spirit, however we describe it, but every one of our practitioners will always give advice on how to protect their soul. So for me, this is a reality-based therapy, not a therapy based on fear. And also, if someone does read the report, if someone does go into and understand how easy or how very simply they can protect their own energy, they won't need to come back for another one. This is the thing. So we're not looking for repeat business. We're looking for people to come in, have a clearing, have a sovereign energy, have a sovereign soul, take responsibility for their own spiritual hygiene. And that means that they won't need to come back next week. They won't need to come back next month or next year. Sometimes people come in for a top-up and a check. They might be going into hospital for an operation. They just want to have a clearing first. But it is about educating people. It's about helping people understand the importance between having their own sovereign energy and being able to take responsibility for themselves. And that, to me, is the complete opposite of a fear-based therapy.
Yeah, it's really good. I think that's the whole thing, isn't it, from our perspective, that we're working from a place of confidence and positivity. Most of the clients are in a fear-based state, and of course, recipient/client are in that space of fear because of the problems they're going through. But certainly from a therapy perspective, it's based on, in truth, integrity and love, because we have to be working with the highest vibration to connect with our guides, and obviously our spirit guides won't connect with us if we're not working at the right levels, the right intention, the right integrity, the right frequency. And I guess the biggest problems we have really is the negative, intrusive aspects of the medium connecting to some sort of disruptive, masquerading entity, really, that then is kind of masquerading to be their guide. Would you say that's the case, mate?
Yeah, I think false guides is a very, very important sector of the training that we go through. And one of the things that we do go through in training is don't be the weakest link. Understand your own spiritual energy, understand your own spiritual protection, and use it. And the biggest, if you like, the biggest puncture in your own energy is your own ego. And I think if you can't work your own ego, you have a problem. We're all human. We all have egos. This work is for for humanity and humility. And you've got to be honourable when you do this work. And if you bring your ego into this work, then very, very quickly it will expose you. And I think that's something that we've seen a few times, unfortunately. People that are working with energies that are perhaps not of the highest good, but because it gives them a certain amount of power, they kind of enjoy that, and that amplifies their connection. And certainly false guides, you got to come back into series 2 for this, because we will go into false guides in a lot more detail and really explain how they work. But for this episode, you've got to look after yourself. You've got to be discerning of who you're working with spiritually. You've got to know who you're working with as your practitioner, partner, whether it be the facilitator or the medium. And you have to take responsibility for your own actions.
Yeah, it covers it well, I think, really. As you say, the false guide conversation is a conversation that we can take into a different episode, but I think that really concludes this particular episode and the conversations around the myths and the misconceptions that we've covered today.
So we hope you've enjoyed it. This is episode 5 of 6, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.
This podcast is sponsored by the Spirit Release Academy. To learn more information about the Academy and their ongoing courses, please visit spiritreleaseacademy.com.